Hello and welcome back to Raze Gaming and welcome back to Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Today we're talking about, say, fuse and combat tips to make your experience in combat and exploration a lot easier. There's a lot of benefits to knowing about this stuff, whether that's swapping damage type, benefiting from the different elements, or massively increasing your damage with resources you've probably got and you're probably not using. Let's get straight to the point though. We'll start with a really strong farmable weapon. A weapon fusion that is going to give you 40 damage just pretty much from the beginning of the game. All you need is it to be nighttime and then to be ambushed by some bokoblin skeletons. These exist in ambush only at night and are pretty easy to defeat. You just have to hit them like once and then their heads fall off, you hit the head and then they will die. Very commonly though, they will drop their skeleton arm, which is a low durability, fine damage weapon, but if you fuse it, it doubles damage up to 40, which is pretty incredible in the early game or for any burst. It makes for an incredible sneak attack ambush because of the incredible bonus to the damage, and can be accessed pretty much immediately from the start of the game. Having a nice supply of these then is a great way to have lots of burst whenever you need it. If you want to hunt them down then, you can just rest at a fire or any time skip you want and just play at night, and they'll ambush you whether you're in fields and open areas or following roads. So if they ever do spring up on you, it's always worth fusing to get that weapon. Next we're talking about this, the bomb flower, which as you probably know is a very effective thrown weapon which will blow up enemies in the area when thrown at them. Very effective for that. You can also just attach it to, say, an arrow, long range, very pinpoint accurate explosive shots, and that's awesome too. These are more obvious. What I want to talk about is the shield infusion version. If you were to, say, take one, hold it, put it on the ground, and then we can go ahead and fuse to our shield. So if we put it on our knight shield like so, it's now on the back of our shield. What's really cool about this is it gives you a way to basically pinpoint accurately explode and leap up by doing a shield surf. All you need to be doing is blocking, then you jump, and then while you're in the air, you press A. Mid-air, I do the jump, and then I go straight up into the air and activate my glider, giving me a very nice vertical leap into the air, very suddenly launching me and giving me the option to overcome obstacles if I need a little bit of verticality. Of course, there is another thing you can do. Using your Zonai devices, you could get a portable fan and put that on the ground like so. With some careful placement and then turning it on, you can activate it and it'll create a wind tunnel, which then you can activate glider and get high as well. It's going to be about the same height as the bomb jump, as the bomb surf, but you know, you might not want to waste these. They are important resources. Maybe you want to use these fans and contraptions, and maybe you're somewhere indoors or you just don't have access to a fan. So doing a quick bomb shield leap up can help you access some areas that might be difficult to get to otherwise. Next, I want to talk about fusing with monster and enemy parts. Mainly, we should talk about construct parts, which you should really not sleep on. These parts drop from the various types of constructs based on their level and difficulty, and the stronger they are, the stronger the parts they drop. What I'm talking about are these parts here with a yellow and green theme. As you can see, we have the soldier construct horn, and then level 2 horn, and then we have the captain construct horn, and you see that goes to 2 levels as well. We can see what they're actually going to provide us with in the information here. It says fuse attack power 3, so that's the weak one. This one's a pretty strong one at 8, but it gives a specific moveset, and then we have a sword here with 5. And you can do the same with monster parts that you're going to fuse with. This basic horn gives us 4, we have 7 from a blue version, and 17 from a black bokoblin. Why I bring this up is because you get these drops constantly. You can see I've got 40 of these, for example, 16 of the next up one. And it's very easy to take a weapon that is, you know, low on durability and quickly fuse to keep it alive, or just simply increase its damage. To do it, all you need to do is hold one and then drop it on the ground, and then of course, just like any weapon, choose fuse and put it on your weapon. Here we've made kind of like a short sword out of that one, whereas say with the horn level 2, which is kind of like an axe, we can of course make an enhanced version, a little axe to work with and fight with, and this also works for chopping damage, which is very useful. And another way to quickly identify what's worth fusing and what's powerful and what's not is to sort by your materials by fuse attack power. You can see this black bokoblin horn is actually the strongest I have at 17, then we have 16 with this horn here, and very quickly we're able to identify which is the most valuable fusing materials. We can of course use these to make elixirs, and the better the more powerful, but making very strong weapons wherever you are, or recovering durability if you're at a loss, you always have access to them, especially when you're killing monsters and picking up their parts. Next, let's talk quickly about two weapon types to do with rocks and stones, because while they might look very similar, they're actually different. One leads to blunt damage and the other leads to sharpened sort of chopping, perfect for cutting down trees if you need to generate that kind of resource. As you can see, a rock is the larger one, which will lead to blunt damage, whereas a stone is the small one, which leads to that kind of chopping style, and that's how you make an axe. Honestly, with the simple amount of times that I've wanted to make an axe and thought I could use a rock and then not understood why it's not working, well, I hope that quick tip helps someone. Stones and rocks are different, and stones are what you want for axes, whereas rocks are used for blunt damage. Speaking of which, that's really important. So let's talk about blunt weapons such as this one. There are spike traps all over fortresses and strongholds like the one I'm standing in, and you can easily fuse your weapon to have that. This makes it a very powerful blunt weapon in terms of the damage output that you get as you turn it into a powerful hammer, but then also it has blunt damage. Blunt damage is really important because they've added armored enemies. These guys have kind of damage resistance on them to many damage types. Unless you're going to blow them up in a massive explosion, you're going to need to deal blunt damage to break the armor, then expose them to actually fight them properly. But there's also enemies that are completely immune to regular damage, and you kind of need to use blunt damage to fight them. These stone creatures are a problem, whether they're the giant ones or the little ones. You just can't deal damage to them unless you're using blunt damage. You can do something as simple as, say, infusing a rock on the end of a stick, and now you have the damage to actually hurt these guys. Knowing that you can break armor and deal damage in this way can make some particularly difficult enemies not so bad to deal with at all. Now it's time to talk elements and the many ways they can benefit you in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, of course, they've removed the elemental weapons, and you have to make them yourself using fuse, and there's quite a few ways to do that. For example, I hold a ice spear which can freeze enemies on attack. As you can see, that is incredibly strong. You completely stun and hard CC even the biggest enemies, which gives you a way to deal damage for free, or even swap off to a different weapon between freezes. This is something you can consistently pick up and do and make some ice weapons when in a colder region. All you need to do is find icicles and then melt them, and there are many ways to do that. Just basically have any heat, throw a fire flower a couple of times, hold the torch that's lit, put a campfire next to it, whatever. Eventually it will break down, and often they'll drop the icicles. Then you could attach that to a weapon and make yourself an auto freeze weapon. This is incredibly powerful when it comes to this element. I would definitely recommend picking up a few icicles and making a few freeze weapons whenever you have the opportunity. On the other hand, if you are in a cold environment, maybe a particularly cold environment, and you need, say, level 1 or even 2 cold resistance, well, then you can use rubies. These precious red ores actually have fire properties and can create fire weapons, just like the other options, like topaz making lightning weapons and opal making water weapons. Just like anything, then you can just hold one, put it on the ground, pull up your fuse and put it on your weapon. Suddenly you have a fire weapon. Not only will it increase the damage ever so slightly per hit, but it will also generate fire. So for example, without my cold resistant legs on, I'm freezing and that's a problem. But if I just quickly pull out my weapon that has a ruby on the end of it, suddenly I'm heated up and I'm not so cold anymore. That combined with, say, the warm greaves here will get me to a full, much higher cold resistance and basically make it very hard for me to freeze even in some of the colder places. Also, as a weapon, it will generate fire, which can be very useful, especially in ice regions or in general. As I mentioned though, there are other types like the lightning for topaz or the opal, which if you put this on the end of your weapon, it'll generate water instead of fire. That can be great in the hot regions, particularly on lava sections. You can actually generate platforms by shooting out water using this. So gems can be so useful in the gameplay aspect as well as selling them for money. On that note, let's talk about magic rods, which are particularly useful things, or you can even get magic staffs. Now magic rods can be neutral without actual any element in them, and to change that, this is where infusion comes in. Just like we just talked about with melee weapons, we could take, say, a gemstone and put that on the ground and then just quickly infuse it. And now I have a water wand, which can deal out triple shots of elements. Instead of just one with, say, a melee weapon, the wands can shoot out multiple, dealing a lot of damage if that enemy's weak to that element. And also you can see it reaches quite far, impressively. But what if you don't have access to these pretty rare and often expensive gemstones you don't want to fuse with? Well, there's another thing you can use to get elements. That is jelly. Choo-choo jelly. As you can see, I've got a couple here. There's red, there's white, there's blue or neutral, and then the one I'm missing is the yellow lightning. These are indeed elemental effects. For example, if I take this red choo-choo jelly and throw it, it's basically a fire bomb, a fire element, which you can throw. Of course, much like anything, you can attach it to an arrow for some pinpoint and much longer range versions of this. And what's awesome is it's quite easy to convert or make lots of this. For example, you can swap the elements of these by just picking them up. Say let's grab 5 of these neutral jellies and putting them on the ground. Now I could just throw a different jelly at it to convert them, but that'd probably be a bit of a waste. Of course, I have other ways to generate fire, and a pretty consistent way to do that is going to be fire fruit. So I can turn all these neutral jellies into fire jellies and convert those. That way I'm able to constantly have a nice source of elemental damage, and whenever I see a neutral choo-choo jelly, I know it's worth killing it even in the late game, because I can turn it into something more useful, like an elemental shot or whatever element damage that I could possibly need. Finally, there's also a great option when it comes to your shields. These flame emitters or flamethrowers are incredible when attached to, well, any shield, because whenever you actually block, it will shoot out the fire for some of your battery charge, and you can get some really consistent damage out with that. When traveling in a cold region like this, being able to pull out fire whenever you need it is incredible, and in particular when you're in the caves dealing with the worm enemies, oh my god, being able to block and burn them at the same time, which instantly stuns them, exposing their weak point. That's probably my favorite way to actually fight those enemies. Just infuse a flame emitter and work with a shield and destroy them like that. So as you can see, there are many ways to work elements into your build, whether that's melee, magic, ranged, or otherwise. The game heavily rewards you playing into this stuff, so try experimenting. But there you have it, a quick overview of things that should be really helpful to you in your gameplay. And as always, if you have anything you feel you could include to this topic, then you can drop it in the comments. You might just help someone. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.